And so when we look at early prehistory, and as a precursor, and as we talked about in part 1 with the Mesopotamian kings, that's where Nimrod was. And Nimrod married into the bloodlines of the Rephaim and started hybrid human dynasties. And also understand that Nimrod was a Hamite, son of Cush. And he earned his reputation and began to be a mighty one against the giants. And it's interesting that the Septuagint version of Genesis 10's description of Nimrod actually says he battled the giants and earned his reputation there. So we need to understand that, because that's context for the kings that are coming out of Mesopotamia that we talked about in part 1, and for things that happen in Canaan. And we also understand that because all of this happens in Genesis 10 right after Genesis 9 and the Canaanite event, which is really important as part of the context for what's going on in Canaan afterwards, is this is all very early on within the first 10, 20, 30 years of the flood that we see giants show up. And those are the individuals that Nimrod is earning his reputation against. So we need to understand the context and the chronology, and we get that if we just let the Bible flow in the order of the events that it provides for us, unless there's markers put in, which we also covered off, like the prophets, but they'll have markers as to what periods they fit in. And if we understand that this is the time of Abraham, Genesis 14, so not very far after Genesis 10. And so even though a few hundred years would have likely passed, or at least 100 anyways, one would presume, you have Abraham who is moving into the land of Canaan from the land of Nimrod and the kings and the giants that are reigning over there, and into another hotbed of Rephaim. And this is the land that he's going to be promised by God. And he's living amongst these mighty Rephaim who know who he is, know which God that they follow, and yet Abraham is able to live and thrive. And so one probably needs to understand in all of this that Abraham is doing this through the support of God and probably through additional strength. And we're not going to cover this off, but Abraham is quite a warrior, as he's understood in prehistory, and he actually frees Lot from the Mesopotamian kings, but that's another story. But just wanted to sort of lay things down in terms of the context of what we're going to talk about today, because when we look at what's coming out of here, these are the seeds for the beast empires that are going to roll down afterwards. The beast and the metallic empires that Daniel talks about. And because they're descendants of the Rephaim dynasties and the bloodlines, I think beast is very much appropriate to understand what is being talked about. That these are not the offspring of normal humans. These are the offspring of the giants that were procreated by the angels with the illegal counterfeit spirit, and these are the divine demigods that were ruling and plan on ruling again in the end time. So we need to keep this in mind. And if you recall last show in part 1, we talked about, just as a quick summary, we talked about first of all Amraphel, and he was the king of the the third dynasty, and this is set in the time of Amraphel as it leads out in Genesis 14, so we get the marker of time. And he has a name that actually means the giant people of a god, Amraphel, and or the giant people of mighty ones. And so depending on how we want to define El, there is the meaning. And this is obviously a name that's loaded patronymically with his genealogy, which is very usual. And so he was also part of the Amaru people and the Amaru god, as you start to see that lineage and that time frame and that spreading of the Amorite people into Mesopotamia. We talked about Arioch, who is the king of Elisar. And Arioch means lion like men. And so there's an accounting in the Bible of lion-like Nephilim that were warriors as opposed to kings for the most part. But obviously, Arioch, which means lion-like, was one of those kings and has associations with the Aryans and a few other bloodlines that, again, we're not going to go into today, and we talked about in part 1. But these are the lion men of Moab that are talked about in the Bible, and the lion-headed men of Gad, and these are the Urlalu and the Urmalalu of the Sumerian tradition, which were fierce warriors. So again, we have this Nephilim and this Rephaim relationship with these kings, and their names tell so much about it. And we had King Tidal, who was the king of nations, and that means a great son and chief of nations, so the great son. And he is, we talked about last show as being a Hurrian, which is this transliteration of the Horim. Again, more Rephaim that's in the Canaanite land, and we're going to talk a little bit more about them today as well. And Kedalaomar, which means Ked, which is king, and Laomar is God, so he's the king of the god of Elam. And so Laomar was the god of Elam. And so again, you get this direct relationship because the king of the god would be an offspring of the god. Just as you have, the names that we're going to talk about in terms of some of the people today are going to have that relationship back to the father or the parent angel, which would be the second incursion, as I would understand it, as creation after the flood and as Rephaim as opposed to Nephilim. And of course, we talked about in the last show that these were the Cadmonites and the Cadmonites, as you might see them in Genesis 15. These are, which means Easterners, in the ancient original people of the East. And so when we talk about ancient, that is either going to mean before the flood, or it's going to mean immediately after the flood. And I think because they're listed, and they're not listed in the table of nations, like none of the Rephaim nations are, the pureblood ones, then probably for me it fits better that they show up by Genesis 15. We've already been introduced to a whole bunch of different things about Rephaim in Genesis 14, and who the Canaanites intermarry with in Genesis 10. And we're going to talk a little bit more about them today as well. But we get a chronology of events and an understanding that these are likely a second incursion, like Gilgamesh was second incursion according to the Epic of Gilgamesh after the flood, whereas Utnapishtim, which is also the biblical ark story, and from the Sumerian Noah, as they like to call him, was also a giant, 2/3 God, 1/3 human, as Gilgamesh was, and that's the survival story. And so we get, those are the two main versions. And there's a third bucket on the ark, but again, that's another rabbit hole we're not going to go into today, although we may touch on it again. But keep those things in mind as we're talking about now the nations and the people that these four kings are going to fight against in the land of the covenant, in the land of Canaan. And we're going to talk about, first of all, Genesis 14:5, because, and then we're going to link back into the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah and the Pentapolis cities of the Canaanites. Just because it just sort of feeds into it a little bit better if we jump forward a few verses. So we're going to go to 14:5 in the War of Giants. And we're going to start with one of the nations that the four kings of Mesopotamia are battling with and are probably destroying, which are the Rephaims. And that's, in the translation into English, has actually an S on it, even though Rephaim would be the plural of Rapha, which means giant. And it comes from 7497. And they're in Astaroth Karnaim. And that's in the Bashan region. So that's in the Mount Hermon region. And that's where Og and Sihon ruled over the Amorites. Okay? And even though Og and Sihon are the last of the giants, the Rephaim, the Amorites, have a different name. And they're not patronymic. of Og or Sihon in any way, or of the Rephaim directly, because as we talked about in the last show, that was Amaru, the god of the giants. And I'll give you the name of the patriarch a little bit later here. But we're on the Rephaim now, and Sihon ruled from Edrei and Ashtaroth, and that's of course with Astarte, and she's also has several different names like Astarte, Queen of Heaven, different titles like that, and even with a Baal transliteration of the word Baal, as she's also known on. So we have the Rephaim, who are destroyed by these four kings, and I think that is what brings about the succession of Og and Sihon over the Amorites of the Bashan, Mount Hermon region that's east of the Jordan River, as opposed to being ruled over by a patronymic king of the Amorites. And so the next set of people are the Zuzim, and it's 2104, which means roving creatures or wild beasts. So again, very, very, very apropos, so to speak, for the beast empires, for the seeds of the beast empires. And this is of Ham, which is typically a patronymic name for all of Egypt, lower and upper, even though Mizraim also moved there. So one would have probably been in upper and one would have been in lower Egypt. But for all of Egyptians, it's their people. And what it's saying here is that Ham, who's the one who violated Noah in Genesis 9, he too is intermarrying with giants, and his family is intermarrying with giants in Egypt, who are going to be the rulers. And these are the Zuzim. And this is the same bloodline that Nimrod is going to succeed either in the second generation or the third generation as the occult tracks it. But that bloodline now becomes the bloodline of the Egyptians. And of course, Nimrod is a Hamite as well. So you see how there's an interfit there. And so that's the Zuzim. And so that's how far this war would have taken, all the way from Canaan right through to Egypt. This was kind of that first world war sort of thing, and the first balance of power that was erupted over the vassal states of the 5 cities of Canaan not paying their tribute. And so obviously they lost a war before that. That's not recorded in the Bible. But there's a settling here to the new Nephilim world order of Rephaim, so to speak. And also in 14:5, you have the Emim. And the Emim means terrors, just as you have the terrors of the beast kingdoms coming down in Ezekiel 32, being imprisoned in the prisons, the cells along the sides of the abyss, both before and after the flood. These are the terrors who created terror in the land of the living, but also have died, and they were so horrible in their treatment of humans that they're locked into the abyss. But they're coming back somehow, some way, probably possessing some sort of clone body or something like that in the end time, because Revelation 9, we have not only the fallen angels, but these demon spirits being released as well. And these are the spirits that are talking to Pharaoh in the dual prophecy of Ezekiel 32. So that's all in 14:5. But there are more Rephaim that are in the land of Canaan, the land where the fourth son is going to take the curse of Canaan, and they're going to usurp that curse by intermarrying with the Rephaim to not become the servants, not to become the slave states. And that's why they rebel in Genesis 14 against the third dynasty and Amraphel, the king at the time. And Chedorlaomer was the tax collector, so he reported back, and they bring the alliance into the land of the covenant. So moving on to 14:6, we're now going to talk about the Horites that are in there. And that means cave dweller, just as there's a lot of tradition and legends of giants, I think, after they're kind of chased out, and they're still physically giants. They're hiding from the population, and they hide out in caves. And caves also have a tradition with portals. And so if you've ever heard the Afghanistan interview with Steve Quayle, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. Of course, that giant lived in a cave as well. And it also means troglodyte. So when you hear literature with troglodytes, look for that as an allegory for some sort of messages and communication of giants within that literature. And the Horites are not from Hori in Numbers 13:5, because that happens over 400 years later. And it's not the son of Lotan, Hori, who is a Horim as well, so that's a patronymic name being passed on, because the Horim are here in Genesis 14, and this is Genesis 36, although Genesis 36 does sort of reach back into the beginning of the time of the flood as the kings of Edom, who were there before Edom was. So we need to understand that these are Horim that are giants that are talked about in Genesis 14, and not the Horites that are the clans of Canaan who are patriarchless. And so one presumes that the Horim, the Horites that are talked about are the offspring of Hori, which probably is the name of the patronymic Rephaim that begins that clan. So you've got two classes of people. You've got a Horim that are human hybrids, and you've got giants. And that's a common thing to understand if you're trying to keep things straight. And that's why you need to understand the chronology. And so when you have the Horim that are there, understand that these have a relationship to the giants in Mesopotamia, because that seems to be the transliterated term Hurrian that created the Mitanni dynasties and the Mari dynasties, and intermarried down throughout the various Rephaim nations, the Amalekites, Hivites, intermarried quite regularly, and that they're also part of the tribes of the Marianu, which again, you bring in the Aryans, and these are again related tribes. So all of this is an intermingling and sort of a describing from a biblical perspective of these various branches of the Rephaim created shortly after the flood. And similarly, we have Genesis 14:7, where you have the Amalekites. And again, in Genesis 36, Eliphaz marries a Timnah female Horim to produce Amalek, which produces the hybrid human Amalekites, who are challenging for the birthrights that Israel are, and which is why they're wanting to wipe them out right from the beginning of the Exodus, and then are their enemies all the way through, right through to the times of King Saul and King David, until King David finally finishes them off from being a power. And they were one of the great powers, the Amalekim and the hybrids. And the Amalekim are also listed in Numbers 13 as a people taller, greater, and stronger than Israel 14 years later. But those will be more of the hybrids than the Rephaim. But they do live amongst the Anakim and probably other Rephaim as well. And we understand the Anakim in Deuteronomy 2 are not Nephilim, but Rephaim. So giants, and giants goes back to Repha and Rephaim. So we also need to understand that these Amalekites, by the chronology, are the Amalekim as opposed to the hybrids that are talked about here in Genesis 14. It just happens way before the hybrids are going to descend out of Amalek from Eliphaz and Timnah. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about the Canaanites and the Canaanite clans and some of the patriarch-less clans who have no patriarch. And they don't have a patriarch in the Table of Nations because that's the Rephaim. And the Rephaim, just as Rapha or Arba, do not go back to the Table of Nations. But Canaan, Sidon, and Heth are patriarchs of the clans, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But even though they're going to intermarry with the giants, they are still the offspring of Ham and course, Seth and Sidon are the offspring of Canaan. So they're part of the patriarchs, part of the 70 that are listed in the 70 of nations. So again, if you understand that, it makes things a little bit easier that these clans are hybrid Rephaims. And they will have a patronymic aspect to it. And I'm going to cover that off in my next book for the sequel that I'm doing on the Genesis 6 conspiracy. And so the Amorites talked about are the same Amorites that are in, again, Numbers 13, the people taller, but not the Anakim, separate. So taller than Israelites by quite a bit, but not as large as the Rephaim. That would be the distinction. And again, that is from the Amaru god, part of the Baalim, and the Amaru god of Ugarit, which I'll come back to with the Canaanites in a second, and coming from the words Amar and Am, meaning proud, boastful, and people, as we talked about in part 1. And the root word for Amorite is 567 Amor. E-M-O-R, and or transliterated as well as A-M-A-R, which is the Hebrew word for proud and boastful. And so Amor, Amor, or Amar is likely the name of the Rephaim, taking his name from the god who produced him, who then passes his name on patronymically to the Amorites, which is why the Amorites are still called Amorites in the time of Og and Sihon in the Mount Bashan region, even though Amorites lived elsewhere as well. But they're not patronymic to the bloodline of Og and Sihon. They're of the Rephaim line, a different line than the Rephaim of the Amaru. So again, I know that's a lot of different terms there, but we need to understand that and understand as well that this would be similar to a king of the bloodline, which was Amraphel, again, which I covered at the beginning of the show a little bit and in detail in part 1. So moving on to 14:8 then, we also then have listed all of the 5 kings of the Pentapolis of Sodom and Gomorrah, of the Canaanites. And again, all of these Canaanite clans organized themselves in Pentapolis city-states. And by the time of King Og, he actually had 60 cities. So he was governing over 12 sets of Pentapolis city-states with the village and the mice webbing of defensive network mixed, as part of that defensive military strategy. So that's why he was so powerful compared to the other kingdoms of Canaan and the kingdoms of the Rephaim of that time. And so you have Sodom, which is as the king of Bera, and that means the son of evil. And then you have Gomorrah's king, which is Bersha, which means wickedness in iniquity. And then you have Admah, which is Shinab, which means splendor of the father, with a B at the end of Shinab, meaning father. And so splendor of the father, a lookalike of the father. Again, you have that sort of patronymic aspect into the name. And it's very important. Is also known as it's Shinbad. I mean, now that's a rabbit trail I'm not going to go down to. We're going to run out of time if I go on that one, but it is a good story. So Shemember is the king of Zebulun, and that means lofty flight. And from Eber, also long, as in long-winged or in long-necked. And so just as Og is defined as long-necked, and so are the Anakim. Again, a similarity and patronymic in the names as it's coming down through the line. And Shem means renown, just as in Genesis 6, the men of renown. And also equally from Shemaim, which is the heavenly ones. So again, you see all of this encoding into the names that's being passed on to the various kings. And these are the names of the kings of the 5 of the Pentapolis that refused to pay the tribute any longer, and why Chedorlaomer went to Aram-Haphel and said, we need to organize this alliance and go fight and force them to pay the tribute going forward again. And these are Canaanites. And Canaanites, just like the Amorites, it's kind of this umbrella name for everybody in Canaan. But Canaan is the overarching patriarch of the Canaanites and all of his sons and daughters that married in with the Rephaim. And so Canaanites are also mentioned in the Ugaritic text, but distinct as a people. So they're like merchants, just as the Sidons were merchants, and Tyr, part of that is merchants. And so you have the Rephaim kings and their gods of Baal and El and Astaroth and Astarte as being the same gods as the Canaanites. And most of those Canaanite clans are going to worship the Baalim of Mount Hermon. And they are distinct, though, from the Rephaim. They are going to intermarry and be the hybrids and have the same gods and have Rephaim kings in many cases overseeing the various Pentapolis city-states, which are fortresses, the mighty walls, Mipspar for fenced cities, and fortress and castle as it's throughout the Old Testament. And it's important to understand this, particularly when you're trying to understand what's going on in the wars for the conquest and the giant nations and the city-states that Joshua and Moses went up against, and mostly Joshua after Moses died. And so they have the same religion as the Rephaim, because they intermarried with them, and they have the same pantheon, and they have the same rituals. They are sort of the intermix, the intermediary class of human hybrids. And they followed in the footsteps of Nimrod, as we talked about at the first part of the show, who was also a Hamite. And this was the land that Canaan squatted, just as Nimrod stayed in Shinar, which wasn't part of their division of the 70 nations. And so all the other families of Ham settled in Africa, whether or not it's Cush in Ethiopia, whether or not it's Mizraim in northern Egypt, whether or not it is Put in Libya. And it also probably attests to why the Phoenicians set up Carthage, as that would have been part of their inheritance of the land, but they decided to illegally squat in the land of the covenant, to intermarry with giants, to throw off the shackles of servitude by creating hybrid races, and then lay in wait for the nation of hope, Israel, to come and to wipe them from the face of the earth. And all in spite of the curse that was set against the fourth son of Ham for what he did in Genesis 9:25. So if you want any information that goes a little deeper into the detail on this, I have one on the Mesopotamian kings, and then I have another one that's part of the Giant Wars that talks about Genesis 14, these giant kings in the land of the covenant. So until next time, may God bless you abundantly.
All right, my friends. My name is Bishop Olsenback. This is my YouTube channel and my Facebook group, and I want to welcome you to tonight's program. That was an awesome video. Gary connected the dots. That is, some for Gary just to memorize the names, right, of these Raphaim and Gibberim, and it just blows my mind. I could listen to Gary all night long. All right, my friends. I will do an announcement here. Brother Harold suggested that we do a video, right? He's been asking me for some time now. I want to say hi to David, the priest. Hey, brother. Welcome to the program. Brother Harold was asking me to bring Gary, have Gary talk about Tamiel. If you don't know who Tamiel is she's they're one of the 200 that fell to Mount Hermon, and she taught abortion. But there's more. Now, hold on. There's more that goes on with Tamiel. All right. She also taught enchantment. Enchantment means mysticism, magic. All right. So Gary's going to break it down, the whole Tamiel scenario for Brother Harold. Because Brother Harold's been asking for me to do a show on Tamiel for quite some time. It's a rough subject, but the truth needs to be put out there. And I want to thank Brother Harold for making me do my job, because my job is to expose Nephilim culture. And she is part of Nephilim culture, just like Lilith. Little is known about Lilith, but your Holy Bible talks about Lilith. My friends, my view is Lilith taught Cain. And it could have been Azazel or Zamizal, the leaders of the 200 that fell to Mount Hermon. But my view is it's Lilith. She was kicked out of the garden. I'm sure she got sentenced to the land of Nod too. In Nod, she taught Cain Enochian mysticism. Right? Because somebody had to teach Cain. Cain just didn't get kicked out of the garden and go to the land of Nod and learn it on his own. He also builds a city called Enoch. We know this because our Bible tells us this. He builds a city, right? All right, my friends. Tonight we got David, the priest. We got Harold. And we got another brother named David as well. Let me scroll up to get David's name. David Smith. I want to welcome David Smith, David the priest, and Harold to the comment box. I want to thank you guys who comment in the comment box. Y'all are the ones that make this program when I go live. All right. Y'all ask questions. I'm able to answer these questions. If not, we can go to Gary Wayne and ask questions. This is why I got Gary on our show live, right? Every single month is for you guys to ask questions to Gary. I worked hard to get Gary on the show, and I just want people to be able to ask questions because we all have different views. This is what makes us different. This platform is not about me. It's about us. Because when we come together like this, we're fellowshipping, and we're fellowshipping in Yahweh's name. And that's the importance. Because when one or more gather, he's in the midst. And I guarantee you, Yahweh's in the midst tonight. All right, my friends, it takes a lot of money. I'm just going to come out and say this. It takes a lot of money to run this program. And I have made some cups. It says Yeshua. All right. And on the back says Yahweh. All right. I got t-shirts, hoodies, water bottles, and they say Yahweh. All right. Different items. And why I'm coming out on air and saying it, because y'all never hardly ever hear me say this, but my friends, if you like what you're seeing, please donate. Bottom line. All right. Let's talk about Nimrod. You heard Gary talking about Nimrod. Nimrod's birthday is December 25th. That's fact information. All right. Fact information, not my view. Nimrod was a character. You know, Nimrod was once a mighty warrior for Yahweh, but he jumped ship and became a Nephilim. How? How? And Tubal Cain. How did these characters become Nephilim? Gibberim, Raphaim, it's all the same. How? Through Enochian mysticism. This is how, my friends. Gary didn't come out bluntly and say that tonight, but I am. I'm going to give it to you bluntly. That's my job. All right? And my friends, you can take this to the bank. I had Derek Gilbert, Gary Wayne on this show about 5 days ago. I asked them, are we in end times? Both of them didn't hesitate, and they said yes. And then they started going on and giving me evidence. My friends, people ask me all the time, well, William Bishop, if you've studied the book of Enoch for so long, what do you get out of it? I'm going to tell you tonight what I get out of it for studying it for over 12 years. Yeshua is near. All right. When the Son of Man's name has been revealed, he is near. I'm revealing the Son of Man's name to you tonight, my friends. His name is Yeshua. When you're pronouncing a Hebrew word, it's from the right to the left. Yeshua means salvation, and it's all about our salvation. All right. Let me see here. People, you read my dashboard for a second. You know, this I run a dashboard. I got the comment box going on. I got my dialogue. I got people message me, and I do a lot to run this dashboard. So when I mess up, you know, bear with me, all right? Because this is all new for me. This dashboard. All right. Let's talk more about Lilith. Like I said, I think the Bible says something about Lilith twice, right? Nephilim 5 times. All right, but Lilith was sentenced to the land of Nod with Cain. It makes sense. All right, we know the fallen angels taught humans, they perverted the knowledge, the 7 sacred sciences. They perverted this knowledge. Man was striving to learn. All right, this is what the book of Enoch has taught me. Enoch is 7th from Adam, Noah's great grandfather. All right. Our apostles are quoting out of the book of Enoch. Apparently, they're packing around the book of Enoch if they're quoting out of the book of Enoch. All right. I'm not trying to confuse nobody. But check this out, my friends. There's 2 Enochs, a righteous and a bad Enoch. The righteous comes from the line of Seth, Jared. The bad Enoch comes from the line of Cain. See, Cain bore a son. Yes, in the land of Nod, he bore a son. There must have been people in the land of Nod for Cain to build a city, right? So if you're asking who else was in Nod, there had to have been people because our Holy Bible states that Cain builds a city and he calls, right? Our Bible says this. There had to be people there in Nod if he's building a city. Apparently, right? All right. All right. See, let me check these comment box real quick here. Oh God! Well, you always go back. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, whistles, and all that good stuff. That way, you know when I go live. That way, you know when Gary goes live. Because if you're not subscribed, you don't know. All right. I've started this channel 4 times over already. I got it up to about 5,000 people. I was shut down. I keep getting shut down. For me, it's not about the likes. It's not about the subscribers. It's about that one person that hasn't heard Yahweh's name. That's what it's about for me. If I could touch just one person that doesn't know about Yahweh, Yeshua, and the power that's in the name, so much power in the name of Yahweh. See, this is lie number 1. Right? There's 3 major lies. Lie number 1 was to hide your Creator's name. They could not have the masses praying in Yahweh's name. So 1611, King James took out the name of Yahweh, added God, Lord. That is a title, not a name. His name is Yahweh. Hallelujah. Praise Yahweh's name. See, my friends, it's just, that's what I want to say. King James was a Mason. You know who helped King James rewrite the Bible? Bacon. Who is Bacon? Some say it's Shakespeare. Wouldn't that make sense? Guess what Gary says? I have learned so much from Gary Wayne in the last 8 years of knowing this man. I've learned, and this man has so much patience, because there are so many people that reach out to Gary Wayne, and I guarantee you he gets back to you. It might take him a minute, but if you reach out to him, he'll get back to you. You reach out to me, I'll get back to you. My friends, it's all about fellowshipping, and that's what we're doing here at this channel in Yahweh's name. Lie number 2 was to confuse you about the cosmology, the plane that you live on, the earth. They had to confuse you about this knowledge. All right? Look at the UN. It has a flat earth map as its logo. The UN has a flat earth map as its logo. Look above me. I got it posted up there on my right above my shoulder. Above me, my right shoulder. All right. That is the United Nations. Wake up. I get made fun of a lot for being a flat earther. My friends, I'm giving you pic of the United Nations. The flat earth map. They're using it as their logo. The elite do not hide things. They come right out and it's up to you to comprehend. It's up to you to seek. All right. I'm giving it, I'm putting it out there, and I'm going to continue doing this. That's why we're building this channel. It's for us. All right. So please don't be scared to comment in the comment box. This is live entertainment. We're interacting live. So please comment. Like I said, my friends, I got these really cool cups. Right? Ashua coffee cups. I got thermal mugs. Say Yahweh. Right? T-shirts. This is a really, really nice T-shirt that I personally wear all the time. Uh, it says, "My people shall know my name." Right? Right. And it's seeking Yahweh's word.com. That's our domain for merchandise. My friends, it takes money to run this channel. All right. I'm not out here trying to beg or borrow. I'm letting you know straight up, it takes money to run this channel. And if you like what you're seeing, please donate. You can do a Cash App. You can go through our merchandise, buy merchandise. There's all kinds of ways to help this channel. All right. All right, my friends. My name is Bishop Olsenbach. This is my YouTube channel and my Facebook group. And I want to welcome all that's joining in, like David Smith, David Priest, the Priest, Harold. I want to thank you guys for commenting. All right, my friends. The third lie, right? 3 major lies to hide Yahweh's name, to confuse you about the cosmology, the plane that you live on. And 3 is to confuse you about Enoch. All right. All this Enochian, bad Enoch, good Enoch, Enochian calendar, and all this, they confuse you. I'm just telling you straight up, stay out of book 2 and 3 of Enoch, because that's really going to confuse you if you start studying it. See, 2 and 3 got pencil whipped. All right. In 1776, Robert the Bruce stumbles across the book of Enoch in Ethiopian. It was already in the Ethiopian Canyon. Book 1 was. It could not got messed with. Now, book 2 and 3, they got tampered with. So stay out of 2 and 3. It's nice to have for your collection, but stay out of 2 and 3. All right. Book 1 is 99.9 accurate because it was already in the canon. It couldn't have got messed with. And so we owe a lot to the Ethiopians. All right, my friends. So we talked about that. Let's do a little recap. We talked about how Lilith, because somebody had to teach Cain Enochian mysticism when he got sentenced to the land of Nod, right? My view is it's Lilith, right? Because she got sentenced to the land of Nod too. See, little is talked about Lilith, but she became a demon, right? A succubus, a Jezebel, right? That's what Lilith became. All right, my friends, I want to ask you from the bottom of my heart to please pray with me. All right, my friends, please bow your heads. And if anybody wants anything prayed for in the name of Yahweh, it'd be the time to comment in the comment box. You know, my friends, like I say this a lot, but we all have different views. That's what makes us different, right? Yahweh is not looking at your crutches. He's looking at your heart, right? What type of hurts are you putting out? That frequency and that vibration. What is that hurts, right? See, y'all, this is what Yahweh is looking at, is our hurts, what we're putting out. And we want to put out is love, because that's what Yahweh is, love. All right, my friends. Please bow your heads with me. Yahweh, we offer ourselves to you, Yahweh. Yahweh, you are the beginning, you are the end. Please allow us to see this in our walk. Yahweh, there's people out here that just heard your name for the first time tonight. These are the people that need to see that you're omnipotent power. These are the people that you need to touch, Yahweh. They're babies, and it's just, and I see it, I hear it all the time in my group, Father. People are being blessed because they're praying in your name, right? And we want to thank you, Father, for all your mighty blessings that you store upon us. Father, you are the beginning and you are the end. Please allow us to see this. Amen, brothers and sisters. Amen. All right, we had a lot of people tuned in. We were praying. So I'm gonna keep talking. I'm gonna talk about I'm gonna talk about the UN. I'm gonna talk about this flat earth map. All right. So get ready. All right. Nazi Germany gave up their motherland to seek new lands beyond the ice ring. Yes, my friends, there's new lands beyond the ice ring. Nazi Germany gave up their motherland to seek new lands beyond that ice ring. And you can take that to the bank. And how can I prove it? How did they do it? I will answer your questions tonight, my friends. All right. In 1942, the entire world allowed Nazi Germany to change the Hertz. Why would the entire world allow Nazi Germany to change the Hertz? They changed it to 432 Hertz. All right? Why would they allow it? Because this is how they got in touch with the fallen angels. It's through hertz and frequency and vibration. Nikola Tesla says if you want to understand the keys to heaven, you must understand frequency, vibration, and hertz. Right? The Braille Society, they say the same thing. I could go on and on about different societies that have studied hertz and frequency and vibration. This is how they got in touch with the fallen angels. The fallen angels leak technology to the Fourth Reich. The Fourth Reich leaks it to the world. My friends, we're in some strange times right now. All right? What's going on in Ukraine? What's going on in Israel is going to multiply. All right? It's time to wake up. All right? You don't hang your head and say, oh, poor me. Because all you've ever been taught was you as a sinner. You're a sinner, you're a sinner, you're a sinner. By religion. Religion means to bind. All right, my friend. All Yahweh wants is love. He wants that hertz coming out from your heart. Because your heart puts out a hertz. 1.9. Boom, 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 boom. You want to connect your brain and your heart hurts, right? You want to connect these two. And how you do it is in prayer and meditation in Yahweh's name. You build a relationship, you build a conscious contact. These are the things you do. And once you do this, take this to the bank. He will just do open doors and all this magnificent things for you. Yahweh will assure you had the authority to cast out your own demons. You don't need me. You don't need no priest. What you need is a conscious contact, a relationship with your higher power. And my higher power is Yahweh. And he has proved to me over and over and over his power. I have a group called Seeking Yahweh's Word with almost 30,000 people, like-minded people. Please come join me. It's on Facebook, and it's called Seeking Yahweh's Word, right? Just like our merchandise .com, it's the same thing, but excuse me, my friends. Let me pause. What seeking Yahweh's word does for me personally as a member, because even though I'm the creator, I'm still a member. But I get to bear fruit, right? I get to read other people's comments and pray for them, and they don't even know I'm praying for them. You know, I'm sorry I don't comment a lot in the group anymore. I'd be there all day long at my computer commenting. There's 30,000 people almost in our group. So this is why I don't comment a lot, but I throw up 15 posts per day for you guys, and I'm gonna get better at commenting. I just haven't been doing it a lot lately, and I know I need to get back and start picking some weeds. All right. I kick a lot of people out of our group as well. All right. Just because we in our group, we are flat earthers, and we're definitely all about Yahweh and Yeshua. All right. But we are flat earthers as well. All right. So feel free to come join me at Seeking Yahweh's Word on Facebook. All right, my friends. My name is Bishop Olsenbach. This is my YouTube channel and my Facebook group, and I want to welcome you. I want to thank you for tuning in to tonight's broadcast. I love you guys, and may Yahweh bless you abundantly. Hallelujah.